All right, we are live, y'all. Hey everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are coming very tired, but also very excited for like where the work is bringing us. We've been going hard with our Invest Divest crew. We've been doing some very magical things with a lot of our bailout families, but we also are human, one, right? And we also want to make sure that we address what it is that is current, that takes place, that comes up. I think a lot in the work around what is needed, people get energized about having a call to action and be ready to fight. But what's really interesting is that we're not really practicing those ways in which we get there, to announce that another world is here. Last May, global uprising took place, not just a centralized local one, or not just one that took place in a majority of American cities. Folks who always gather and take over the streets and reclaim the land and reclaim justice as ours, joined all of us in an uprising. Some of them still going. Some of them changed entire government systems. But we also want to name that abolition is real and it isn't a new concept. It's a few words from Richard Allen that I can put it into contextualized concept, just to name like where we are when we are thinking about abolition. And he wrote those back in the 1700s as a free Black man in Philadelphia, then the nation's capital, about where we have to go when we're doing this work. And at that time, they had to utilize the church to even get that type of message across. Think about where we are now, where we can shout that into our mayor's faces, and we can shout that into the police chief's um, face, and we can say that to the richest lobbyists and know that it affects them and how much work we've done to get there. We have a bit of a statement that we want to read pertaining to the way we move this work and how we show up in this work, and what abolition essentially means, and remembering that white supremacy can come in any type of form or fashion. Kanisha?
So this is a statement that we've had prepared. As activists and organizers, we acknowledge that it is possible to condemn a behavior or action without relying on the broken system that we purport to uphold. We also acknowledge that no one is healed or made whole, neither the harmed nor the one who has done harm, by sending an individual into a cage. Disappearing people into the system isn't justice. People really want folks to be harmed, and that's violent and anti Black. Folks don't realize these processes acknowledge that someone who has caused harm can also be harmed, and they do not deserve harm or cruelty as a punishment. In the situation with Kendrick, we have increased the harm caused by sending him to jail. Disappearing him into the system does not dismantle the issues at hand. We are emulating the very systems that we are seeking to dismantle, systems that we know do not work, and we know.
Were we able to hear that last part? I don't know if that was me or not. Yeah, the last part of that, Kanisha, didn't come through.
The last paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay. So in conclusion, we are emulating the very system we are seeking to dismantle, systems that we know do not work and we know do not provide the resources needed for us to build community outside the structures of white supremacy.
I want to name that we're entering upon the 1 year, the 1 year mark of not only Breonna Taylor, but also on that same day, the acknowledgement of a failed pandemic response and the shutdown to large amounts of institutions, including over 50 million people in our workforce, lots of people that we know, some of our folks. We also are coming up upon a period in which we saw a massive amount of loss. One of those fights that we had to fight was the fight around unjust systems, keeping people in jail, which is pretrial detention, either by bond or by petty crime. And Ayanna Presley, Representative Ayanna Presley, across, of course, a part of the squad, led that call to action to name how treacherous it was to be able to leave people in jail with corona on its way in. And what we saw take place over the following months was nothing short of torture. So, with that, when we think about justice and when we think about what is fair, that is not getting ready to come in a courtroom. That is not getting ready to come at the name of somebody who has gotten a law degree. It's not getting ready to come with some blind white lady holding a scale trying to tell you what justice is and what justice is not. What we know is that we can build a system of what justice is, and we are using methods right now to be able to create what justice is. We'll get into a bit of a conversation that we had with Tom Wine in trying to call the work that we are doing very much disruptive. That's the point of the work. The point of the work of bail disruptions is to disrupt an entire system that is willing to kidnap people and keep them in prison or jail at times and in terms that have nothing to do with the crime that they committed. Also, to call those crimes illegitimate. When we say we keep us safe, we mean turning to a place of community care, community safety, and community defense. We have all the tools that we need. We no longer need policing forces. We no longer need the court system to be able to adjudicate over our lives. Jess?
Whew. So a lot of harm has been caused recently. I know that a lot of people tuned into a live stream yesterday that showcased a court appointment that happened, and that the person who was representing themselves has caused a lot of harm in community. What we have to understand and what we have to reconcile within ourselves is that the prison industrial complex as it stands is not prepared and is not equipped to heal this person. Do we want to disappear people, or do we want to heal and help them? We have to come to the understanding that those who cause harm also have the capacity to be harmed. And to wish harm on someone in that system is anti-Black and violent. Even if that person themselves has been anti-Black and violent, it says more about us that we're celebrating harm that is being done by a member of the community being disappeared into this institution that is committed to white supremacy, that is committed to harming community members, that is committed to demonstrating the full force of the state and their judicial, accessories. That's not something that can be celebrated. We also need to call into effect the fact that certain things that we discuss intra-communally are now being discussed outside of our community. The Black community and communities of color have a long history of dealing with things internally. We were the ones who started restorative practices, and we were the ones who brought up transformative justice, and we've seen it be whitewashed and bastardized. But what has happened now is a member of our community has enacted harm against someone else. And instead of us calling this person in or even calling this person out, which can be an effective way of moving with someone in that process if you have a relationship with that person. But instead, we've seen the celebration of his disappearance into this system. And that's not something that people can be okay with. We can't say that we're committed to uplifting the name of Breonna Taylor and that we're committed to uplifting the name of those who have been lost at the hands of the state and then delivering people into the state's hands and parading our egos and celebrating our role in getting them into the state's hands. Now, I can't tell a victim what to feel. I can't tell a victim to pursue a certain avenue for justice or to not pursue an avenue for justice. What I can say is that some people who have not been victimized or who have been victimized and who have felt legitimized in that victimization are utilizing this opportunity to display anti-Blackness and their allegiance with harm does not say community. Their allegiance with harm does not spell out safety. Their allegiance with harm mirrors what people have been saying all along, and even prior to these uprisings, that we have to be the ones to keep us safe. And that if we're not going to be committed to it fully, if we're not going to be committed to it unapologetically, if we're going to be committed to it in an unconditional manner, then we need to step back and to review the ways that we've perpetuated anti-Blackness in our lives.
Thank you, Jess. And as y'all know, we have some very accountable white folks who pull up and do work with us, mostly in the name of reparations. That also comes as labor and funds. I think when we really start diving into those conversations, we'll really understand what true abolition means. But I think Missy and then Rebecca, so we can go through.
So I just want to talk a little bit about jail support and what that looks like and invite people into that space. So as Chanel mentioned, we're coming up on 1 year of global uprising. And what we know is that though it is a protected right to protest and to speak freely against systems that do harm, the officials in the system comes for us when we do so. And jail support exists to support those people as they walk out of the doors, both to free them, to work to pay ransom, to get them out, to support them as they walk out from that trauma, and to provide the material resources that they may need to be made whole and heal on the other side of the trauma that is incarceration. And we have a team through the Louisville Community Bail Fund of folks who do that work and who want to do that work. And if you would like to join us, we invite you to that space. We invite you to join us. And as Chanel mentioned, it is a way that white folk can jump in and do reparation work and reparative work. And as we roll into the 1 year mark, we anticipate that we're going to get busy. So please reach out to us and let us know how you can walk alongside of us and to join us in that work.
Okay, Rebecca.
Hey y'all, so it's Rebecca. So sorry, my computer's acting a little funky. I wanted to just lift up all of what Jess and Chanel have just said too about this sort of perpetuation of harm that we have when we take this allegiance of harm, and that when white folks gather around to watch as the justice system takes in another Black man into their facilities to, as Jess is saying, just be lost in the system. And as we know in LMDC, as was lifted up by our own lawyers in this conversation, that the conditions in LMDC right now are terrible, and it could potentially be a death sentence to be put into that jail right now, and that is ultimately what we're celebrating. And so when we do that as white folks, we're just we're being complicit in these systems that we benefit from and that our people built. And we have to be doing the absolute opposite of that, which is to tear down these systems, which is to be part of this type of work that LCBF is doing with jail support, as well as all of our avenues of volunteer work, abolition of these systems that we benefit from, that we built, that if we are not complacent in tearing them down, then we are complacent in holding them up. And that's very much what's happening right now. And that, we got to interrupt that, and that there can't, we're not true allies until we do. And if you even want to use that word, really.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because we want to be co-conspirator. I mean, we want to be, y'all need to be co-conspirators into the work of dismantling and abolishing racism, and how white supremacy seeps its way into like every bit of the things that we do, to where we would think that it is great to champion in a movement that was created because of the hypercriminalization of Black people and the mass erasure of Black death by the state, coupled with a foundation built off of Black bodies and labor. Um, you would think that would be not a thing. So we want to name yay for the call to action, right? Like we want to say, hey, but abolition is a practice and abolition is the tactic to Black liberation. And so it takes more than just saying some shit and putting shit on Facebook or wherever. It takes to actually change the way in which you envision what freedom is and what it might be. And knowing that we are nowhere near that yet, but we have all the tools that we're ever going to need to do that. And I'm going to name this: there's not a person on this earth that is able to move us away from the space that we are at now if we all don't get there together and led by Black people, especially the most marginalized of those, when we talk about hypercriminalization and the tactic of mass incarceration for Black and brown folks. Like, let's remember that it's a thing. So I want to go ahead and jump on down the agenda. Oh yeah, that's right. Duh. Tomorrow we're gonna have a host of activities. That graphic is coming because we're hitting up our national folks, Movement for Black Lives, and a bunch of other organizations that throw down and do this work. And making sure that we have some pieces as it starts to get warmer again. We're seeing folks here in Louisville, but also seeing folks across the nation jump back out in the streets. And while we love that, we want people to be safe, but we want people to be able to actually shut shit down. And so we'll be going over some like 101s, especially jail support, and an all important piece that's becoming very much popularized with a few places: Care Bear support. What does that look like? This mix in between healing and security, and making sure that the people that get us out in the streets and lead us out in the streets are okay and taken care of. We want to go ahead and enter into the conversation around Mama's Day bailout. Mama's Day bailout began in 2016, and it had to do a lot with bail funds and how we can disrupt so that we can create not only reforms but abolish a system, pre-child detention, jail. That's what jail is. So before you're even convicted of the crimes, you're charged with the crimes, but jail is to kidnap you and hold you there until your trial. And sometimes those trials aren't for years. And a organizer out of the South, out of Atlanta, named Mary Hooks, visioned out this, let's just go ahead and bail mamas out for Mama's Day. Because we hear a lot of stories about how, you have to do different things to get by while your children and your family are outside, and what that means and what that looks like. And I think Jess did a lot and touched on that, what trauma-informed care looks like. And that's not getting ready to be received or practiced in jail or in prison. Those COs know nothing about trauma-informed care, especially if they are acting just like the oppressor and inflicting that type of harm onto people. And so in 2016, they jumped off the first Mama's Day bailout. It was so successful. I think they got out like almost 100 mamas out. And then we've just been averaging a little bit over 100, and we're almost at 200 mamas each rip. And like, while a lot of people think that's not a large enough number, we don't have a large enough amount of people throwing down to even do it. But we are making sure that people get to stability. So it's not just about, getting them out and we're getting them back to trial. We make sure that people get to close the vulnerability that even opened up in the first place for them, realize that like prison and jail don't have to be their story. They don't have to own institutionalization, and be able to build with their family. We do have a Mama's Day bailout on here with us who's picked up some roles, so we want to talk to her a bit in just a second. That fundraising for Mama's Day bailout actually comes from individuals, just like the way that we've been funded so many times before, whether it's crowdfunding or people just sending in because they know the work is going to throw down. Individuals help make this happen. We don't supply our work on institutions, foundations, or anybody like that. We are not a nonprofit trying to move this work. We're not even making a profit off of this work. We are able to directly take the funds and give it to where it's exactly needed, where it's bail, groceries, or even housing, especially self-care needs. So the way Ebony got out was just being able to notice like who was in um, and being able to talk to the lawyer and kind of check on the situation. Do they have enough support is one of our first questions with anybody that we're going to bail out. We're not just bailing out people because it's fun. Do they have enough support to be able to get back to work? Is there stability in the home? Is it like, fragile with rent or anything else? What about food? What about income? What's going on? Corona, I know that's a big thing. But Ebony's lawyer then reached back out to us and was like, Ebony will be ready to be bailed out. And these are the support systems that come up for Ebony. And like now, Ebony's ready for a support plan, which just says, these are the things that I'm going to do. And then I can commit to being able to go to a retreat or another space where we just dive in intensively into some things that help folks out. And being able to realize a lot of what has been happening uh, to it's a little doorbelly thing. Um, Create that vulnerability can be closed. So, Ebony, if you want to talk about your story, um, and if you want to like get into those pieces about like what has come up for you.
Um,
Yeah.
it's I just feel like as long as I stick with you all and I put forth effort, like Kanisha would say, we got us. And I 100% I run with that and I'm not going nowhere. Um, the bailout is amazing. You all took 100% care of my kids was taken care of, my nieces was taken care of, my family was taken care of. I had a ride. Like any other time you get out of jail, they just let you out on the street. I had a ride. Somebody knew my name. It was awesome. It was beautiful home, welcome home thing. Like you communicate with my family to where my family made a big old homecoming thing for me also. It's neat. It's beautiful. But we still got a long way to go and I'm here.
You sent me a long ago text message this morning.
I did. I did. I've been moving around a lot, so I've been like, I wanted to make sure I got on the live today. But yes, I 100%. It's made me humble. It humbled me. A lot of the stuff that we have to go to, it makes me more of an adult. Like I said, my family is really they're there for me. So if I ask for anything, they're gonna help me. But like it's more of like me being responsible for myself, me becoming a woman, a responsible woman for myself, so I can take the steps to do what I need to. Self care, self help, love, self help. Um, just loving me, not needing no significant other, figuring out who I am as a person. I thank y'all for that. I ain't going nowhere though. I thank y'all for that.
And then you just made me think of something. I just uh, what else did you say? Because it was long, y'all. Um, I think. Oh, what do you think about holding down the hotline though? Like, so Ebony has picked up holding down the hotline a bit. Yeah.
Okay, so holding down the hotline, you just me being in that situation before, I totally understand where y'all coming from. Everybody has family, everybody has to do stuff, they got stuff, but like I'm making my business to like keep the line open just in case anybody needs to be updated. I didn't know that I was doing it wrong, but I was just treating people the way that I would want to be treated in that situation. And I've been in that situation before, so I totally understand how they feel to be like, what, why? And you just sitting there. So me being able to talk to them and tell them, well, you're on the list. Just know that. Just try to get your family members to join the volunteer team. I always make that clear. Get your friends, your cousins, to the point where I'll add, what's your mom's name on Facebook? I'll add their parents or something on Facebook, just to reach out. Like, but the experience is they want to go home. I would like for the women's side to. I've never had the woman's side call. I just feel like they deserve some chances too. I know the Mother's Day thing's coming out, but like I really haven't heard about, except for that one girl who just came got out. Um, but the men are very anxious, and the thing about it is, like I tell them all the time, maybe you're not sitting in there for your time. Maybe it's just something for to humble you. It had to humble me. I had to learn some stuff about myself while I was in there. So sit down there and think about yourself for a little bit.
Really. So I wanted to pull up Nicole's point, and she's like, "How long is the process to get the inmates out on bond? It's overcrowded, and the guards don't carry it out." And what Nicole is talking about is people think it's an excuse that we're using COVID for that reason. You know, people are actually catching COVID, and there are several dorms that have COVID. When you are in jail, the state does have a bit of a responsibility to take care of you because you are state's property. Right. When we talk about enslavement, when we're talking about doing this type of work, we're talking about eliminating the system that looks at bodies as property and being able to build profit off of those bodies. And so we don't call them inmates because the states do. Those are our community members, their loved ones. They're somebody's sister, brother, aunt, uncle, whatever. And that's exactly who they are. That did not change. That is not something that the state can take away. The other thing is, it is very hard during COVID and any other time to know when somebody will go back up for a trial. And so that's what we're waiting on, is like the hearings to move a little bit faster, so that we can recycle the funds that we've been using to get folks out. And I think we have over almost $3 million tied up in Jefferson County, just waiting for those to get moved so that we can start getting other folks out. And because they are so ornery, we had to have a conversation with Tom Wine. I'm going to kick it over to Rebecca, who did such a great job that day on calling white people on their shit. So like I said, like an episode in the next episode of calling white people on their shit. um, Rebecca was able to name a thing that was trying to get passed over in our conversation, where like, yeah, sometimes we'll get angry and we're waiting for white people to get it and they're reading us laws and facts, which I asked them not to fucking do. I got upset because another one of our bailouts was being issued with a forfeiture. They know good and fucking well that we'll take care of that, and it's time to do a supportive plan, which is kind of like a contract to say that I'm going to do these things, just so I don't get back in any type of trouble. Because some of the things that they're getting hit with are stupid and petty. Like they got caught with some weed. Well, I thought, it was okay to get caught with that amount of weed. So like now, why are we punishing people and sending them back to jail for that? Hell, I felt like one of them said jaywalking. It was just so ridiculous, and like what they're willing to do just to have somebody's bail forfeit. So I'm gonna give that to Rebecca because it was funny.
I try. I think what I really called them on, that I wish I had found these words in that moment, was that we were coming to them to feel like their system is rooted in white supremacy, and to defend that, they brought all white people. And I'm like, there was a total disconnect for them about what that actually meant, visually, and like as far as power structures, and that, they're powerful people sitting at this table. They brought all white people, and and that's where the power is clearly lying. And at the same time, they were talking over and ignoring the black voices that were at the table, and they were continuously saying, well, this is the system working, this is how it's structured, this is the policy and the procedures. And we were trying to get them to understand that the system is not, the way the system works does not actually work, right? That like when we are allowing white supremacy to work, that is oppressing black bodies, and that is torturing black bodies, and it's murdering black bodies. And that is not a system that's working for a very large chunk of American citizens. And they could not hear that. The system is working for them. They are beholden to that law and procedure that Nicholson brought up. The 1978, there was some legislature passed, and like that's what set the court system in Jefferson County how it is now. And one thing that was brought up was, well, maybe we've progressed a little bit past 1978, and maybe we need to update some of those things, and that it's all folks sort of stuck in the past and stuck in that process. And they did things like mention that they understood that like HIP is a broken system, or that there are some areas of bond that are broken systems. So they see it broken, but they also weren't taking any steps towards fixing it, or towards using and leveraging their own individual power within the system to like dismiss cases, or not charge people, or not put in the motion to revoke a bond, or not put in a motion to revoke a probation, or put in a motion that says to the judge that you would like that person to come out of jail because of COVID, or because you want their bond to be reduced, or what, those sorts of things. They just don't acknowledge that they have those individual powers in the system to do what they can. And it was a very interesting conversation. It went about how I thought it would go, in that they just didn't really hear, and they didn't really care to hear. And that, I think, is the worst part about it. And, these are elected officials, and then they hire all the Commonwealth attorneys and the county attorneys, and they set the tone and the vibe of what their office does in the courtroom. Let me mute my children.
Kanisha or Jess, if y'all want to comment on that meeting too. What we also found out was that, of course, they're in the business of manipulating. And so if people understand that the office is in a very large place of manipulating. And I am for sure that they do have some conjunction with some of the production of news that has been going out around bail funds here lately. Had, certain folks hadn't amplified the weirdest nature around bail funds, folks would actually understand and really grasp the concept of how bail has kept people hostage in jail. Um, Many folks have been on the phones in jails trying to just get whatever funds they can so they can get out, save their jobs, make sure they get their children. Some people's children have been taken away. So it's not a joke. This is not like a hobby or anything. We're talking about being able to actually identify and notate that, like, when people do get lost in the system, and several times, the courts and the other agencies don't even talk to each other and get lost in the system. I forgot what's the lady's name. Betsy Lucy or something. That no, I don't think it was Becky, but we're close. Lauren, I don't know, the lady that turned beet red when she tried to put on that performance of, I know there's not a prosecutor that's using race, religion, creed, or whatever else in my courtrooms as a reason to discriminate against somebody. What was her name?
Ingrid.
Close. And so she does all this performance, and I was like, but it's a prosecutor's office. It was built off of those things. Like, the entire criminal justice system is built at the benefit of Black and brown people. So I think trying to be like, oh, prejudices and stuff is the whole reason why you're even there. Jess, how did you feel about that conversation? Because Jess popped off several times.
Child. First of all, the conversation was a hot mess. So one of the things that the states and the city like to do is they like to point towards training that people have had. What we need to understand is that training is also happening inside of these industrial complexes, and that we're now going into, instead of operating outside of these complexes and these systems that are meant to disproportionately target and affect people of color, and especially Black people within those systems, that instead we're transforming these things. So they talked about taking workshops in regards to anti-racism and implicit bias. These are not things solely that being presented to people who participate in and sustain white supremacist organization and system, it's not enough on its own to dismantle those things because it's not being internalized by the employees. There's still an expectation of an allegiance to the system of harm, and instead of allowing people to confront their insistence on being loyal to that harm, we're instead throwing workshops at them and creating these DEI moments that don't amount to equity in our communities. It would be one thing if we were having these workshops with these entities and they were led by Black community folk or undocumented community folk, and if there was someone who was an accountability coach who walked alongside them and looked at their practices and their policies and procedures. But there's no overlap. There's not enough of an overlap effective. And until they confront that, then we're going to see the perpetuation of harm that's done. We also know that we deal with like these systems that take glee in and they celebrate depriving folks. And so everyone on that call, really on the other side, is coming from a space of professional deprivation and not understanding how, or not wanting to understand because they don't have to. Their livelihoods depend on depriving others from having access to what it is that they need. And we saw a lot of imbalances in power. On one hand, they understand that they have the power to incarcerate and sentence people. But on the other hand, they're saying they don't have the power to dismantle something that they themselves are a part of. Someone on the call, I believe it was Tom himself, named that, if people are ROR'd or if they're put on HIP, they might as well be ROR'd. But we know that that doesn't spell out a translation of profit for the state. So the state at every point is looking to make a profit off of people going into this system. And if they ROR people, that doesn't allow them to collect on a debt that they've put on these people's heads. So it was a shit show. It really was a shit show. Thing that as a society that we can get away from trying to people through things and that we can shift our understanding of it to people internalizing things and to actually having a call to action, because otherwise it's just going to be an incestuous circle jerk of these feel good moments and people are still going to be stuck in jail.
Sorry about that. Kanisha.
Yeah, I definitely want to speak on the HIP aspect of that conversation. That was something, my main focus for being there and having that question was because it's something that has become a repetitive burden for people that I'm trying to support. Um, and I have yet to meet anyone in Louisville who has ever been placed on HIP where they didn't know from the second they were placed on HIP that the cards were stacked against them, because you have to pay to get on HIP. Then you have to go through hoops to find a place to be on HIP. And then you have to beg and plead for any moment of freedom to go to work or sit on your porch or take care of your kids, anything. And we kept trying to have that conversation, and it was just blasphemous. We don't do that. And we're all very much aware. It's just like, yes, you do. Like, we have names. Oh, we don't want names. No, but we have names. Like, this stuff is documented. We have stories. I can just go outside right now and I can find you 5 people that will tell you what happens on HIP. But it is an issue. And I'm still struggling with that system, trying to find help to deal with someone that's on HIP. And it's still like, okay, so how does this work? How does this work? We saw what the law is, but we know what really happened. So how do we get through this? Dismantle it. Period.
I think that was also one of the things that struck me with the conversations that were happening around the court case that happened in Louisville yesterday, is that people are treating these systems as if they are mutually exclusive, as if we can punish this one person using this system that we know is loyal to and has aligned itself with white supremacy. And it's the same system that killed Khalif Browder, and it's the same system that killed Sandra Bland. But somehow, during the conversations yesterday, people have divorced that mindset from their minds. And it's not a mutually exclusive thing. So, the same system that killed Khalif Browder, the same system that killed Sandra Bland, is now the same system that we're using to enact harm on someone who we're saying has harmed others. But it's antithetical to the work that we're doing. And when I say we, I don't mean LCBF, I mean as a community. We can't look at the schools who are welcoming kids back in because of standardized testing, and we can't look at policing in our communities and say that this isn't okay. People deserve better, and that we have to hold more space to recognize people's humanity. Excuse me. And then turn around and pivot and say, this person has caused harm to someone. And because of the harm that they've caused, they deserve to go into this system, knowing what we know on what that system does to deprive people. So yeah, but that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons why I celebrate the work that we're doing, because we take the people who have lived in deprivation, and we kind of coach them through being able to trust their own autonomy. So if you're told where to go and what to wear and who to talk to and when to sleep and what to eat, when you are released from that situation, the burden of autonomy is heavy. So working with people so that they can trust themselves again, so that they can trust their voice, so that they know, okay, if I have a plan, I can stick to it. And if I can't, I can reach out to this person and I can say that I'm struggling, so that we're interrupting further instances of harm. People look at abolition and restorative practices as, a magic wand that we're wanting to wave, and that, we might be ignoring the victim. And it is the opposite. It is because we care about the people who have been impacted by harm, that we are going directly to the person who has handed down that harm. And we're saying, what do you need so that this does not happen again? And that's revolutionary.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that needs to be amplified, right? I had that conversation with one of our professors who's in criminal justice, and we were just like kind of ideating and weighing through that. Because there's always the part where I think it is still, I like that the word codified was used, it's codified in our own freaking minds, that because somebody is the issuer or harmed or perceived harm or has been named as the person who harms, that they are the ones who are the main recipients of a restorative process. No, the restorative process is for all of us. It's for everybody involved. It's for the person who received the harm. It's for the person who gave the harm. It is also for the community who either stood there or was there or practiced or did what for harm. In that space is naming of the harm. And sometimes that's even hard to do. Like a lot of this is very difficult. And nobody is saying it is easy. I think that's the main reason why a lot of us are exhausted, because we're putting into practice something that we want to see. And I think it's working. A lot of this younger generation, regardless if people want to name that, like what they're seeing is very dangerous, that's a lot of emotion behind a lot of the actions that they are taking, whether it's extreme violence or no violence or no reaction at all. But they are also able to name for you what it is that they are actually feeling and hold that boundary. And I've watched that with just several different types of children, including my own, whether I'm doing a great practice of that, I'm not for sure of, and I'm not going to say that I am, because we still have to get into the practice instead of pointing fingers and moving back and forth in that and wanting to say, I've been harmed and just leave it there. There's more than that. And healing isn't easy at all. And I think that might be the biggest thing that people have to overcome, is knowing that, like, moving through a restorative process to a transformative process is knowing that each party and all parties, including the community, are going to have to examine and practice parts of healing. Whether people want to hear it be called healing or whatever, rejuvenation, renaissance, whatever, it takes parties. It takes sessions to do that. And that means it takes time. This doesn't mean that it's a mediation session. Nobody's mediating the transpire of like how to announce harm and move yourself to a place where you can actually be able to put this into practice in other areas. We're talking about like what it really means to move without the system who's just there to like, oh, this is the evidence, you're guilty. So now I'm going to throw you into prison. And then what? Right? Like, I think Angela Davis really breaking down what the prison system does. I mean, hearing it in her voice, but just really naming that, like, the prison system isn't here to help us or support us. We're naming things that people need outside of here that the prison system isn't even willing to give. They're not willing to give you adequate housing. They're not even willing to give you fresh or adequate foods. And with the insurrection, we know that there are two systems because a little funny looking white person was able to get like that organic food stuff. When you are even in jail, they purposely make sure that the food that you eat is not healthy and unenjoyable. And I just mean, I think like a lot of foods that we have come with some type of taste. They rinse a lot of the not the season, the sauce out of canned foods. They purposely make the drinks very, very much sourful. So they are enticing this well-being of unhealthiness. And who is going to be able to recover from that? What I also know that's very troubling to me is that the person that we've been talking about is a person that was raised by a judge that we've been in court watch with, one that has um, made sure that he has mentioned our name in court and just very been antagonistic. So I'm wondering if we also understand how judges get into office, which goes into a lot of our judge work. So if you want to show up for a court watch, that would be great too, because we're looking at some very troubling things. And as the more I'm hearing about this person and being raised by this particular judge, uh, it's really disgusting. Like, it's making me nauseous. I want to see if I can get that video that like Tasha sent to us. But anybody else's thoughts? I'm going on mute.
I think if I can, I would just say, when you talk about abolition really kind of being embedded in how we move every day and not just like the work we do, but like how we live, I think it's really important for white people, especially, to understand that what that means for us is that we're consistently unpacking as we are moving, because we have been inundated our entire lives with this understanding and entitlement and knowledge of these systems that are built to benefit us. And so for us to divest from those, like individually, it takes a consistent unpacking and a consistent intentional understanding, like a moment of saying, oh, wait, if I engage in that behavior, is that anti-Black because it's feeding into the system of white supremacy? So calling the cops, putting somebody in a child support system that is going to pay you without it, doing things like that like are engaging in these predatory systems. Like, it is what is our nature to do, because we are taught that is they are for, because they are, but we have to absolutely reject in every moment of what we do. And that, I think, is really hard work for folks, but it's necessary work. And it's necessary because we built these systems, we benefit from these systems, and we have individual power within these systems that can be leveraged to dismantle these systems. And our people will listen to us when we speak to them about this, right? So we have to take what we know in what we learn in this abolition work and take it to our people and share that out, so that we are uplifting the future that our Black leaders want to build, right? That's our role. And that's when we talk about reparations as labor, that's what it is. It's engaging in your skill sets to help dismantle systems that we benefit from, so that Black leaders can focus on building what the future looks like. That's all.
And I definitely want to name, I think it's important that we all involved in the whole city, that we realize, and I'm just starting with the city right now, that this is all connected. So there's always these conversations about the violence that's going on with the youth and all the the issues that's going on in the city, and everyone's pointing fingers. But that's the purpose of restorative justice, because everyone agrees that putting people in a place for 60 days or 6 years, that person gets out and that issue and that problem and that behavior is still there. But if we have restorative practice as a community, we can come together and have that conversation with that person. Or we can find the ways and the means. If it's about money, we can find the ways and the means to take care of that situation. If it's about an issue between two people, we can find a ways to address those things. So it's not even so much like, it's all interconnected. And we have this currently environment where a lot of what we see is being mimicked by what they see. So when they see this behavior, we can't point in young people and say, why are you all doing these things? We have to ask ourselves first, okay, why are we doing these things? We have to lead by example. And right now, there's a large amount of young people that see how they're being led. If we would just fall back and let them lead, they've been knocking stuff out like dope as hell.
Absolutely. It reminded me of us door knocking yesterday, and asking the young folks about like their experience right now, because I just really feel bad, right? Like my daughter started sixth grade. I think we all remember starting sixth grade and entering into middle school, coming up out of elementary. But are we even hearing them and like what they experience? We know what that was for us. So like how are we now saying, I don't know what that's like for you. And what I want you to do is actually be quiet, and allow me to make decisions for you. That is the state. That is systemic. I'm going to try to see if I can get this video playing, because I don't have no good luck at this. And Natasha sent it to me. And it says video file would work better, but I don't even know. Um, Gonna see if it plays right. So because I don't be pressing the share audio button. So that would help. Okay, so I think it's right here.
When I would visit girls' detention centers, so many of the girls were there for being bought and sold. And so many of them were the daughters of mothers who had been sent away to prison. And you could see that if they had their mothers with them, they would not have been so vulnerable to being exploited. It is absolutely generational. I love, though, what you said about how mothers behind bars would take on the 16 and 17-year-old girls who were also incarcerated. It's the reminder that all the ways that we can create love and connection in defiance of the dehumanization that happens, that love can insist on being present even in these cages.
Well, love is an act of resistance against oppression and injustice.
Exactly right.
And anytime that you can muster up the capacity that you have to love in order to resist the evil in this world, it is what will get us through every moment of inflection that is before us. It's what has gotten us through those moments in the past. And we need to really lean on that right now, in this moment, where there's so much vitriol and so much hate in the world. An informed person understands that resistance is about using the best of the power you have as a human being. And the best of that power is not the power to destroy, but it is the power to build up, to support, to love, and to be connected to a community.
So I hope that played for folks. Anybody else with any last words? I don't know if we can back up Vivian Nixon. I share that in the chat, and we can share that out on our page separately. All right. Thank y'all for coming today. We'll see you tomorrow at 1:00. It's going to be advertised. We'll go. And we'll talk about jail support. We'll be joined with Advancement Project, National Lawyers Guild, I'm thinking some folks from Law for Black Lives are going to be there. Maybe some folks from National Bailout. National Bailout, and maybe our folks from Minnesota. They've been really accommodating right now, especially sharing with the systems so we can build out. And then later we'll talk about Care Bears. But thank y'all. We need a theme song.